The first few minutes after the scene of a mental health crisis is stable and decide whether the call moves forward or spirals out of control. And in those moments, building rapport is what makes the difference. So how do you build it fast enough to keep the call moving in the right direction? That's what we're covering today. 4 tips to start building rapport from the very first minutes on the scene. I'm Troy Siewert, a retired lieutenant and CIT officer. I train officers just like you in practical communication skills that I learned from my 30 years on the job, so you don't have to figure it out while you are in the middle of a crisis. Crises, by their very nature, are unpredictable and emotionally charged. As officers, our first job is always to stabilize the scene and make sure it's safe. But once things are under control, that's when a different challenge shows up. How do we actually build rapport with a person in crisis? How do we get them comfortable enough to start talking with us so we can move the call forward? If we don't build some level of rapport, the person often gets defensive, and suddenly every word we say feels like fuel on the fire. Frustration builds, the call drags on, and our options start shrinking. What changes that? Building rapport in the first few minutes after the scene is stable, because it sets the tone for the whole call. I've seen crises go sideways in under 60 seconds just from a bad first impression. I'm sure you've seen it too. If a person in crisis sees you as an ally instead of an adversary, everything else gets easier. Asking questions, giving directions, even problem solving. But if they see you as a threat, the rest of the call feels like pushing a boulder uphill. Don't get me wrong. Rapport is not about being soft or buddy-buddy. It's strategic. It's about creating just enough connection so the person sees you as safe, not as a threat. And that's what lets them feel comfortable enough to open up and share the information that you need to move the call along. So where do we start? It begins before you even say a word, because your body language speaks first. The way you approach the person tells them a lot. If you come in with your chest out, arms crossed, or your hand resting on your gear, they'll read that as a threat. And when someone in crisis feels threatened, they either fight, run, or shut down. Instead, stay intentional with your nonverbals. Keep an open body posture. Maintain a calm but confident voice, and respect their personal space and property. And this doesn't mean you give up control. It means you send the message, I'm here to help you, not to hurt you. That's your foundation, your baseline. Without it, nothing else is going to land. So with that foundation in place, here's 4 tips to start building rapport. Reassure, ask, reflect, and validate. Let's walk through each one. Tip number 1 is reassure. Once your presence shows that you're not a danger, the next piece is what you say. In those first moments, a calm, reassuring phrase signals safety. It tells their brain that you're not a threat. Things like, you're not in trouble. I want to help. Or, with your help, we can get through this together. When the person hears that kind of support and reassurance, instead of dominance and control, it lowers their defensiveness. And that buys you space to move forward. You don't need a script, but you should have a few of your own phrases ready to go so you're not scrambling for words in the moment. Now, once you've lowered the tension with reassurance, the next step is to get them talking. So tip number 2 is ask open-ended questions. Open-ended questions invite the person into a conversation and encourage them to share more than a simple yes or no. Instead of shutting them down with a question like, are you okay? Try something like, what's going on for you right now? What do you need me to understand? Or tell me more about what's happening. This does two things. First, it gives them a sense of control, something most people in crisis feel they've lost. Second, it gives you the information you can actually use to decide your next move. Now, once they start talking, you can't just let their words hang. That's where tip number 3 comes in. Tip number 3 is reflect. Getting them to talk about what they're dealing with is one thing. Reflection is how you prove you're listening, though. It's simply repeating back what they said and how they feel in your own words to show you understand. For example, if they say, nobody listens to me, life is falling apart, you might respond, it sounds like you've been carrying a lot and feeling like no one's paying attention. See, reflection is you saying, I hear you. Once they feel heard, the natural next step is showing respect for their feelings. And that leads us to tip number 4, validate. This is where respect enters the picture. You're not agreeing with everything they're saying. You're simply acknowledging that their emotions are real. If they say, I'm angry, nothing ever changes, you might respond, I get why you'd feel frustrated if it seems like nothing is improving. That one sentence says, I understand why you feel that way, without agreeing with them. When someone feels both heard and respected, rapport starts to build. I saw this firsthand in a call with a man in a manic state, yelling so loud, I couldn't talk with his family in the next room. I stopped, walked over, introduced myself, and asked him what was going on. He unloaded everything on his mind. And when he was done, all I said was, wow, that sucks. He paused, let out a deep breath, and said, yeah, does. In that moment, you can literally see the energy drain out of him. And from there, the yelling stopped. You could actually have a conversation. That's the power of validation. All right, quick recap. Here's the sequence I want you to remember. I know these moments get messy fast. That's why I keep it simple with 4 quick steps you can always come back to. Reassure with a phrase that signals safety. Ask an open-ended question to get them talking. Reflect back what you heard them say so they know you understand. And validate their feelings so they feel respected. That's your roadmap to building rapport. The way to connect, get them talking, and build just enough trust to keep things moving. So on your next call, think presence first, then remember to reassure, ask, reflect, and validate. That's how you begin turning a tense situation into a stable. It's not therapy. It's tactical communication. If you remember nothing else, remember this. The words you choose in the first few minutes can decide whether the call ends in trust or in chaos. And that's why training for these skills matters, because you don't want to be figuring it out in the moment. And fortunately, there aren't many channels out there dedicated to crisis communication training for police officers. My goal here is to fill that gap with tools you can actually use on shift. Don't wait until your next tough call. Hit subscribe now so you've got these tools ready when you need them. And if you want to go deeper, check out my free monthly newsletter, The Insightful Responder, for even more field-tested strategies built for the street. Until next time, train to respond, not just react, because calm, confident action changes everything.